everyone, it's time for us to go ahead and take a look at the M4 iMac and see how this particular iMac holds up in 2025. Now, the thing to keep in mind here with these types of devices is that without a doubt, these types of Macs still are very, very good Macs. They're very powerful, they give you a bunch of capability, a bunch of features inside, and I'll tell you, if you are about to go through and pick up any sort of Mac, these things are very good options. Are they perfect? Not really. But they're very good priced, Macs, and if you're in the market, they're good options. Now, I will tell you, when compared to some other options out there, these ones might not be the very first ones I'd recommend buying when it comes down to it, but I will still say these types of devices bring a lot of stuff to the table. They're still very powerful, and if you want to go ahead and pick up these Macs or maybe some other Macs that I would recommend buying this year, links will be down in the description below. You can get them from there, and you can help support the channel at the exact same time. Now, starting off with the outside of this particular Mac. The first biggest thing to remember is that this Mac basically comes out in one particular size. So it's not like a multiple different size setup like we had on previous Intel Macs. Since Apple's made the M series of Macs, they've only really made them in one size. Now, when you look at the outside, there's a couple of design choices from Apple that have always struck me kind of like a little bit weirdly. Like I've always felt like Apple could have done a little bit of a better job with some of the design language here. When you take a look at this Mac on the front side, you're getting a 24-inch 4.5K Retina display. So this right there is already like pretty decent to have, getting a device panel like this isn't terrible. It's a good big size display. It's giving you a lot of capability from that side, which I think is really nice. But I will tell you, in my personal opinion, when you're looking at this type of device from that side, the problem that I kind of have with it, first of all, is the bezel. Having this like white bezel like right in your face is something that I'm not the biggest fan of. Again, I think a black, bezel around it would have looked a lot nicer. But in this case, having this type of white one, I guess it's okay. But, I'm more of a fan of like that black bezel that we had previously inside of, our Intel Macs. So it's one of those small things to keep in mind there. Now you're still getting this front-facing camera on the front as well, which is really nice. And then you're getting this very big chin. The whole entire computer basically fits right into that like smaller compartment. So I understand why it's there, but it still kind of just is like all in your face even at that point. So it's just another one of those small little things that kind of, design language wise isn't my favorite. I'll be very curious to see what they end up design changing in the future. Because if you think about it, they were really kind of stressing how thin this Mac was. And it's a very, very thin iMac, right? It's super thin. But my thing is at this point, I feel like I would have rather had a little bit of a thicker Mac and a smaller chin than having this super big chin and a thinner Mac, right? That's just kind of how I feel about it, but it makes sense the way they did it. But, it will be interesting to see what they do in the future here. Luckily for us, it does come out in a couple of different colors. So you can go through and choose the color that you actually like within this type of Mac. And you might like one color over the other. So that could be some other thing that you might end up looking at here too. And you might see for yourself, like, hey, I don't like the white bezel around it or the big chin. But I do like the fact that you can choose a bunch of different colors here. Now, on the back side, this is an interesting thing to keep in mind here. There are two different hardware versions of this Mac. So you can spec this thing out internally to be faster, slower, it's going to cost you more money. But the biggest difference here from the basic model, the base end model to the more expensive one are the ports on the back side. The base iMac, the base M4 iMac is giving you two USB ports on the back. So two Thunderbolt ports on the backside. Whereas if you upgrade your Mac, you can go and get the 4-port option. So this right there is going to be one of the bigger areas where you're going to have to keep in mind here. Because with the M4 iMac, the base model, for it only having 2 ports, it isn't necessarily like a terrible thing in the world. It's not like a terrible idea or anything like that. But you are going to be getting a little bit of a different type of layout from that side compared to something like a M4 iMac with 4 ports. So if you are kind of looking at these types of Macs from that standpoint, that is going to be one of those big types of areas to keep in mind here. Like I said, it isn't necessarily going to be the worst idea in the world if you pick up this Mac, because I still think it's like a really good option. But if you are wanting more ports, you are going to have to kind of make that decision and see for yourself, like, hey, if I want to get more ports, I'm going to have to go ahead and buy the 4-port option. You can always buy a dongle too, but if you want that native experience, you don't have much of a choice but to upgrade. The base model of the M2 the M4 iMac is $1299. So keep that in mind. You will have to spend $1299 to get that base model, whereas on the 4-port option, that one is $1499. So it already is a little bit of a price difference from that standpoint as well. So if you're looking at it just sheer from that standpoint, you were going to see that on the M4 iMac with 4 ports, for that one being $1499, that one is going to be giving you a slightly different type of experience from that side. So again, it isn't really the biggest deal in the world, but that is going to be another one of those types of things that you're going to have to kind of see and experience from that standpoint as well. So again, kind of keep that in mind when it kind of comes down to it as well. Now on top of that, another very important thing to keep in mind here is the performance. So this Mac does come out in a few different variants, and because of that, you are going to be getting the base M4 model, which gives you 8-core CPU, 8-core GPU, and up to 24 gigabytes of RAM, where the more expensive model gives you 10-core CPU, 10-core GPU, and up to 32 gigabytes of RAM. So that right there is already going to be a slightly big difference when it comes down to it as well. If you're trying to go through and kind of pick up a different type of Mac that's giving you a little bit more capability from that standpoint, well, the base model Mac is still going to be very fast for the most part. Like, you are getting a very fast machine in this type of Mac, no matter which way you kind of put it. And I do think that is one of the bigger advantages of this type of Mac. Again, even though you're paying, $1299 or $1499 for these particular devices, you have to remember that one of the biggest advantages for this Mac is that you don't really have to worry about these Macs and like they're, getting a screen, like paying for a screen and paying for this and paying for that. You don't really have to worry about those things here because you're paying for an all-in-one machine. So you can save some money actually without having to go ahead and buy a different type of panel or a different type of display. You can just go through, pay one price for one Mac. It gives you the keyboard and mouse and everything built in. And all you're going to have to do there is basically just use it. So you could probably save some money by speccing out an M4 iMac rather than having to pay for everything separately. Now, with that being said, the performance of these Macs are still very good, right? They're very good machines. They, for the most part, for a majority of tasks that you probably end up doing, you're going to have a really good time with it. And that's something that I like a lot about these types of Macs, because you're going to be able to get very good performance. But here's where things start getting a little complicated. If you already have, like a screen, if you already have a really good monitor you like, if you already you already have your keyboard and mouse and everything like that, and you're just not really needing to, maybe you don't need the screen, you don't need all that stuff, you just need a good machine. If you want to save even more money and be able to get a really good machine, you can still swing for something like an M4 Mac Mini. An M4 Mac Mini is going to sit there and give you a really good experience no matter which way you kind of look at it. That type of Mac is going to be able to give you basically a smaller footprint. It's giving you a really good, powerful machine with either the M4 or M4 Pro chip. And if you get that M4 Pro chip, you can max out that Mac to be faster than pretty much any sort of iMac that you can get right now. And in fact, if you already have the monitor and the keyboard and all that stuff, it will be cheaper just to go and get a Mac Mini and a spec'd out faster Mac Mini than it is to get a, M4 iMac. So in my personal opinion, I think, an M4 iMac is a really good option. If you don't already have a monitor, you're just looking for an all-in-one PC, I think that's a really good option. But I would probably tell you, if you're in the market and you're looking for, kind of a substitute, maybe you already have your, screen and everything like that, you just need to get a new machine, I think that one would make a lot more sense to go and buy. And I think I would recommend probably buying an M4 Mac Mini than an M4 iMac at that point. So in terms of that kind of covers it up there. If you have any other thoughts or questions, please let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that will mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.